Howdy, howdy. Make your way in, find a seat, way up the front. So next up we have Vanessa Wong and Shelly Mills, who will be talking around or having a panel discussion around You Can't Ask That, Women in Cyber Security. So I've asked my good friend ChatGPT again to write me up a bit of a quirky bio. We'll see what it came up with. Vanessa and Shelly are like the cybersecurity version of Batman and Robin, but with a twist of quirkiness and a whole lot of caffeine. Armed with keyboards and an endless supply of witty comebacks, they are the ultimate defenders of the digital fortress. Vanessa, the hacker turned heroine, can infiltrate any system faster than you can say password 123. Her code cracking skills are legendary, and she's been known to outsmart AI algorithms with nothing but a sarcastic remark and a cup of extra strong coffee. Shelly, on the other hand, is a mastermind behind the impenetrable firewalls and encryption methods that would make even the most advanced supercomputers scratch their metaphorical heads. Her expertise lies in complex tech jargon and hilarious memes, ensuring that security protocols are as entertaining as they are effective. Thank you, ChatGPT. I think that was probably the best one so far. So, excellent. Can we give a warm round of applause and welcome Vanessa and Shelly to the stage?
Thanks. Alrighty.
Thank you, Lucas. Hello and welcome everybody to You Can't Ask That, Women in Cyber Security Edition. So this is going to be totally different to any of the other talks you've presented. We probably won't be teaching you anything visionary. We're really just going to be getting vulnerable and talking like the TV show, You Can't Ask That. We're going to try and recreate that. So disclaimer that these answers will be based on our experiences within the industry and our feelings. It certainly does not represent the diverse amount of females and just diversity in general throughout the industry, and their experiences are all unique. So I'll hand to Vanessa. And we forgot the clicker. Oh, yeah. Hold on.
But we really do encourage you as well to submit your questions through the app. We'll get the best out of this session through that. We do have a few questions to kick us off, but we're really keen to hear what you guys want to know from us as well.
And we did crowdsource these questions the best we could.
All right, start off with a little bit of an intro to ourselves while we get a few questions through. So my name is Vanessa Wong. I'm Head of Information Security at RSM Australia, which is a professional services and accounting firm. I've been there for about 9 months now. I've always been in professional services and management consulting for about 15 years or so, not always in cyber security. I've worked in cyber for about the past 10 years in various kind of consulting type roles and leadership type roles as well. A large background in defence as well, which has really shaped my experiences, including being the first Information Security Registered Assessors Program Assessor in South Australia, and I'm part of the SA Branch Committee of the Australian Information Security Association as well. Over to you, Shelly.
Hi, I am Shelly Mills. I like to joke that I am a poster child for alternate career pathways to cyber. I've got a lot of HEC stack and a lot of irrelevant degrees, starting with ecology and then an honours degree in water bugs. I was working for an aquatic ecology consultancy in the office. We were getting PhD grads as unpaid interns. I was like, stuff that. Going back to uni, studied public relations. I was working on the Tier 1 library and IT help desk at Griffith Uni. I moved to IT comms, got to then work on a cybersecurity awareness campaign, became an absolute geek about cybersecurity, and I moved to cybersecurity projects from there. So currently I work at the University of Queensland. I am leading the data strategy and governance team, but my substantive role is leading the cybersecurity improvements program, and I'm also on the board of directors for the Australian Information Security Association. So let's get into our pre-prepared questions before we jump to the audience. What is the best thing someone has said to you in your job, Vanessa?
So I have to say I put this question in myself. Like we said, we did crowdsource some questions, and based on the previous SBS show around You Can't Ask That, Found a lot of the questions to be quite confronting, as we expected, but also quite negative. So I thought, before we go into the doom scrolling, let's start off on a positive note. And so I really like to reflect on some of the best experience I've had as well. So for me, the best thing someone has said to me in my job was, like I mentioned, I've been in my current role for about 9 months, and about the 3rd week in, I was introduced to the board. So I've got a direct line of sight to the board. It was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. Very formal professional setting. I'd prepared, failure was not an option. I'd presented, I had my 15 minutes and then I was out. And the CIO, as part of that, sits in the board meetings, and he just pinged me a little note and just said, "You smashed it. Whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it." So that was really the feedback that I did. Really hard to tell at the time whether or not I'd done well. And after that, we had a chat as well. And I, being unsure, kind of put it down to being at the right place at the right time. But he also said to me, "You're also the right person at the right place at the right time." So that's kind of the most recent thing that's happened.
That's so lovely. Mine's actually probably not someone has said, but what they've written. And I am super lucky. I've got a lot of my team here today. 2 of them have actually given me cards in which they wrote, "Thank you for being the best manager." And that's so special. I still have those cards on my desk. It's so meaningful. So thank you.
I was just doing a quick check on questions, and either we don't have any questions yet, or I just can't see any in the app. So we'll just double check. No questions yet. All right. Maybe we'll move on to the next one, which is, did you get your role to fill a quota? So Shelly and I have spoken at a couple of conferences previously, particularly around imposter syndrome, and we did a workshop on Tuesday actually. It ended up being a bit of a series. But one of the first ones that we did, we kind of got this question from the audience actually about, number one, why there was a lack of male representation on our panel in that particular talk, and whether or not we felt like we were targeted as part of a quota. And it's something that I feel really conflicted about. In my experience, I've never felt that I've been targeted because of my gender or any particular diversity to fill a quota. But that's not to say that I haven't had experiences where I have felt that I've been selected based on a particular attribute that I have. So one of the examples I had is that I had a discussion at one of my previous roles with a manager, and we both discussed there was an external course, industry course that we both wanted to go on and be nominated for, and there was quite a few limited places. And so I said, look, it makes sense that you would go on it first, as you're more senior than me, and then I could go on it the following year. So when it came to nominations, because there were a lack of, female nominees, they put me forward. And I felt very, very conflicted about accepting that particular position. But I also knew that it would be a career-limiting move not to. So I discussed that with my manager, and him being a huge advocate, a massive advocate, he's like, you have to do it. But I just wanted him to know that how conflicted I was about that. And that's really the only time where I felt that I was targeted because of a particular attribute that I had that he didn't.
I don't believe I've gotten any roles in terms of my job to fill a quota, but there are certainly circumstances where I have certainly been that token female, as simple as, being at an event or being asked to open an event because it's good to have a female in this group open the event to show that diversity. And even discussions around job opportunities, I've had people say, apply and you'll get an interview just for being female, which again is a conflicting thing, isn't it? I'm sure we've all had those thoughts over, is it my skill or is it, just because I am female? And it's a hard one to reconcile.
Yeah. And I think it kind of leads into the next question we've got in the live Q&A, which is, did you find you were questioned about your skills and have to prove yourself more as a woman in security?
I've been very grateful where I feel quite respected by the majority of people in the workplace. There have been a few sexist people who I don't think it's to do with my skills at all, but other people I've worked with, they've said, as soon as I open my mouth, they could tell, your stuff. Yep. And they based it just on me.
Yeah, okay. I think I've found particularly in my current role now it's gone a little easier, but previously I felt like I would have to lay out a whole bunch of my credentials and my experience to kind of have the same level of response from the group I was in. So recently I attended a bit of an industry roundtable. And I immediately got this first impression from someone that I was talking to who was a CIO. He'd introduced himself that way and was talking to me, but wouldn't really, like the body language was that he wasn't even really facing me. He was kind of facing away, and I was asking him questions. So I asked him the question, so what is your role at this particular department you're at? He's like, I'm the CIO. And then someone else asked me what my role was, and I explained that I was the head of information security, and immediately his body language changed, like we could actually have a conversation over similar grounds. So that's, sometimes there's been a little bit of that, and even throughout the conversation, I would have to kind of subtly throw in some of the things that I knew, like the fact that I was an IRAP assessor, so you didn't have to explain the Essential 8 to me, or the fact that I've been working for a while, so you didn't have, So sometimes that happens, but I find less often now that I think I've got the backing of a lot more experience than I had. So I imagine it would be much more difficult for people starting out in their career as well.
You know, one thing I experienced, and I don't know if any of the girls in the audience might be the same as me, I'm pretty open about this. I have a face full of Botox. I've got a fear of aging. And rather than people judge me not thinking I know my stuff because I'm female, it's often like, I want to look youthful, and then hopefully I look younger, but then they think, I don't have the experience, I'm too young to know my stuff, and I've noticed that a few times.
It's a double-edged sword.
I don't know what to do. I want to be young.
Which is actually another good lead into the next question we've got here, which is, have you ever felt objectified in the workplace? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Absolutely. Probably not very well, probably emotionally.
I've certainly felt that as well. We've discussed this, I think particularly more in the early stages of my career where I didn't know what was normal. So for me, my entire career has always been in a male-dominated field, and my university, a lot of my university studies were all quite male-dominated, so it was kind of normal for me, right? To just have, a lot of male peers. I'm always going to be working with male peers. But I think what really changed for me that it wasn't okay was when I grew, I realised that the behaviour wasn't okay, so I would set myself some boundaries, which were then respected. But then I noticed that perhaps other people or other young females were being targeted instead, and that's when I kind of realised that this is not okay, and that's when I decided that that I wanted to make change within the industry, really. And so some of the objectification was worse than others. So we had a conversation, or maybe we'll do this quick poll actually. Who here, regardless of how you identify, has been slapped on the bottom at work? Yeah. And keep your hand up if you did something about it. Yeah. So, I mean, even just a few hands is probably too many, especially if it's unwanted. And then the fact that there are even fewer hands of people that did something about it just says a lot. And that's not to say that, times haven't changed since then, but there's still a ways to go if even just a few people feel uncomfortable in the workplace. Do you have another question?
We've got so many. Shall we just go through these?
Yeah,
let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. We only get to see 3 and then they disappear. We have to run through them. All right, this is a good one from Meg. What would you say to your younger self when she was deciding whether to pursue a cyber career? Do it, absolutely do it. And just have a great support network. That I really love most about cybersecurity is the community. We do have a wonderful community, like all you guys here, and Vanessa's from Adelaide, and she's part of my support network. By going to these events and joining industry associations and having great mentors.
Drinking lots of wine.
Drinking lots of wine. How about you, Vanessa?
I would say exactly the same thing. I know I had a lot of doubts early in my career, not just about cyber, but did I want to work in technology? Did I like people more? Did I want to be a consultant? Did I want to be changing jobs all the time? But every time I just thought, well, I'll give it a go, and if I don't like it, then I can always change my mind then. And I think that's really lent itself well to grabbing opportunities, so including cyber, and led me to where I am today.
We've got Luke asked, what positive changes have you seen in the industry in the last 12 months? And I'm lucky, I work at UQ, so I get to work closely with AusCERT, and I've seen the way they've gone around organising their event this year, and I think this is a great example, is AusCERT are really proactive in trying to embrace and foster diversity, and they've looked at what are alternate ways we can get to source speakers this year to encourage more diverse people to apply. So for example, anyone who has applied to speak, there are 2 rounds of submissions, so you can do a first round and get some feedback if you want. And I believe they're also doing like a mentoring program to support people who are starting out to speak. So all those extra things to support diversity. What about you?
Yeah, and I certainly found that it's been much easier to speak out and do something about it. So there's a lot more people advocating for themselves, but also champions advocating for others as well. And I've certainly tried to do that. Again, just trying to remember my own experience in starting out and in working in general, right? This is not limited to women in cybersecurity either. Just not knowing how a workplace works and what's right and what's wrong and what's on the borderline and who can you trust to go to and ask for help, and what resources are available to support you as well. So that's certainly gotten a lot easier in that people are really much more supportive in calling out bad behaviour as well.
Vanessa, can you recall a time when something was mansplained to you that you know all about and what it was? And before you even want to get into this, because I've been at quite a few conferences with Vanessa, and my favourite isn't even mansplaining, it's when she's with her team and she walks up to a booth and they just address the mail and...
Yeah, so there's like been a couple of times where I've been walking around with with a friend, we're actually peers, and they will introduce themselves to them, and then it doesn't matter whatever my manager or my friend at the time says about, Vanessa doesn't work for me, or Vanessa can introduce herself, they will just insist on talking to just them. But yeah, that's slightly different. I can think of a really large-scale example where this has happened. So it was actually a big, I think it was like a big awards dinner in defence, and so the keynote speakers tend to be quite high up, military personnel, and so this was like a chief of one of the, a chief of something, and he was explaining something about one of the platforms that they were developing, and he said, for all you ladies out there, that's a tank, basically. And there was a bit of shockwaves through the crowd. So then a bit further on, they had another keynote by a female this time, and so she paid it back and said, for all you men out there, I don't even remember what she was talking about, but the applause was just amazing. So times have changed. There was a big, I guess, different generational divide as well, and a different experience and upbringing from his military background and her industry background as well. But it just went to show how much contrast there is within the industry. The other one I also like, particularly now in my current role, is that it's one of the things I wish I knew before I ended up in the role, was the number of times I'd have to speak to vendors, right? And so there's pretty much, as far as I can tell, there's pretty much a product that can do anything that I need it to if I want something. And trying to, again, when you're meeting someone for the first time, it can be hard to gauge what experience they've got. And so I find that working with others, being easy to work with other people is an underrated skill, and it's something that I really value, particularly in my role as a decision maker. If I'm going to be going towards to a board and pitching something and asking for money, essentially, please make it easy for me to do that by making me look good and not making me feel stupid.
I'm the opposite. So for anyone who knows me will know I assume the best of everybody, and they just have the best intentions, whether or not it's true, the opposite of zero trust. It's something I've been working to reconcile because I want to keep assuming the best of everyone. So unless it were incredibly overt, I would probably just think, oh, that's a communication style. And then, you know, maybe a female in the room afterwards would be like, did you notice? And I was like, oh, they seemed lovely. All right, let's have a look. I think we've got through the questions, but we've got a few more here. Vanessa, are you even technical?
So I've never been a pen tester, so sorry, ChatGPT. But I've recently changed the way I address this by saying I'm technical enough. And so I've had conversations with my previous team members. So I mean, I don't come from an IT background. If I go back to what I studied originally, it was a pure maths degree.
I feel like that's technical, pure maths.
I suppose. I mean, I did a couple of modules of programming. I was really terrible at it. I actually landed my first role in consulting as a software engineer. I don't know how, because I remember going to that interview and they were asking me about the software development lifecycle, like a very basic, you know, software engineering kind of concept. I'd never heard of it, never even heard of it. Said that to them. I was about 20 years old at the time. They said to me, okay, in your own words, can you describe then what you think the SDLC is? And I must have nailed it because they hired me as a C++ software engineer and I was there for 10 months. And at the end of that contract, they gave feedback to my manager and said, Vanessa really needs to work on her C++ coding skills. I said, I could have told you that. But the good thing about that was that, you know, the maths. So what I ended up doing was, and with, you know, digressing a little bit, but I got to use my maths in that I came out with some sort of pseudo algorithmy type stuff, gave it to an actual software engineer who would make it, you know, nice and neat and work. So that was really good. But I've had these conversations with my previous teams. I know that they've got much more technical expertise and passion than I do. But they've said to me, why do you always describe yourself as not technical? Every time, you know, you don't know something, you just say so, you ask, and you have no problem in kind of understanding or picking it up. So I don't know why you say you're not technical. So I say I'm technical enough.
I really like that. The answer, if you ask Lucas, is yes, I am incredibly technical, as you can hear from my intro. Like you, I did an ecology degree. Well, not like you didn't do an ecology degree, but there was quite a significant aspect of statistics of this degree, and at the time, I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, they just stuck us in these labs, and they had some software statistical analyses on the computer. I can't remember what it was, and we had to code statistical analyses, and I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, I am an environmental science student, it was so hard. And then I learnt to love statistics. And then years later, and I'm working in IT, and I'm reading code, and I'm like, that actually makes sense, that tiny little part of my degree, which was relevant. But I really like what you said about technical enough. I think I'm a geek, and I'm lucky that I can kind of pick up concepts. And I was really lucky the other year because I was working in data governance, so we had to do a lot of data modelling, and I got to work a lot with information architect and learn from him. And so I learned how to code logical data models. So in that aspect, I'm a little bit.
Yeah, I can do that.
Let's see if there's more questions.
Not yet.
No, please add any questions if you'd like to ask, otherwise we'll keep going through what we've got. Oh, we've got one in the audience.
Okay.
Cool. Mark, just give you the mic for the people on the video.
Thank you, Lucas. My question is, do you have any suggestions for colleagues to support non-male work colleagues, like for colleagues to be champions for non-male people? Does that make sense?
Yep. It's easy to focus on the people who are, you know, the loudest or the most extroverted or the ones who are most like you or like everyone else. And so what I try and do is be quite observant of others, I think. So someone who might look like they're uncomfortable but doesn't perhaps want to speak up, or who you know has a good idea because you've spoken to them offline because that's, you know, the way that they operate, and encourage them to speak out in a way that they're comfortable with, whether that's, you know, through some sort of offline forum or suggesting perhaps whether or not you can suggest their idea for them or in a way that they're comfortable. But I think it's really being not losing focus of everyone in your team, not just the people who stand out the most.
What she said.
I do have all the questions here, so I can ask them if you
Oh,
like.
have we missed some? Go
Yeah,
for it.
so many. It's great.
So many.
Okay.
So many questions. It's fantastic. So thank you, everyone. Right, so I'll go down to the bottom. So how might the recruitment of females into cybersecurity be improved?
Well, an easy one is gender neutral language. The number of times I still say it's much better, but the number of times I still see it, while I know, you know, a lot of the time it's not intentional, but those little oversights really just all add up. And I even noticed it, you know, this morning in the keynote, where we referred to security analysts as he or him. While I've never been a security analyst, I did, you know, get my back up a little bit because I've recently hired a security analyst, and I know that a lot of, you know, not even just women, but early career cyber people or people looking to change careers into cyber start out as security analysts. And if we're already pigeonholing them, it really doesn't lend itself to that, you know, the inclusivity that we're looking for. So that's an easy way.
And I'm going to get vulnerable here too. I think something which men don't have to deal with so much is I want kids. So if I'm looking at taking another job, and in the industry, unfortunately, there are a lot of, you know, project-funded contract roles. So if I'm going into a 12-month, a 2-year role, I'm like, well, what's going to happen if I get pregnant? What if I take 6 months off and then I'm off when they need to renew it? Like, I won't have a job. So that really filters down what I would apply for, and I know it does to other people too. And then the other part too is, you know, when your career is just really growing is when people expect you to then go take a year off. So for me, that's something which impacts me.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. On a similar vein, there is a question around paid days off. So I'll read the question verbatim. Mm-hmm. I've noticed some companies have started offering women 2 days paid leave each month as Women's Wellness Day. What are your thoughts, progressive or implying women aren't capable these 2 days?
Wait, hold on a second. We've got a question here. This is something one of our colleagues in the audience has been told. Your heat pack makes me uncomfortable, can you not? And we discussed this before we came on stage. It's difficult, and I mean, everybody has their own health and they might have their own experiences, but recently I've been experiencing incredibly painful cramps where you just want to lay in bed with a heat pack.
And look, everyone has good days and bad days. I have difficulty making decisions or get pretty foggy a couple of times a month as well. I'm pretty open with my team, not open enough with them to tell them why, but just that I'm feeling a little bit off. And everybody feels a bit off every now and then, not just women. So if we're going to be offering wellness days to women, why are we not offering more wellness days in general? Yeah, I don't think it should be just women, but I do love that they are acknowledging that it's needed. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Alrighty, so I have another one here. How do you feel about diversity and inclusion programs that organisations run? Do you feel they do enough to help women in security?
Ooh, that's a contentious one, I reckon. It depends on the organisation, 100%. I personally feel like sometimes we even create a big deal out of nothing by, going, oh, we have a panel, there must be 50-50, oh, there's not 50-50 representation, you guys should be upset that there's not 2 girls and 2 boys, there's 3 boys, be upset, when you otherwise wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. And what we're really asking here is about making lasting change, right? Are those programs really making lasting change? And I think it's kind of hard to say if they haven't been running for that long. So in my previous workplace, again, I was part of a
a program that they ran only for the women in the organisation. And it was great to be able to meet other women in the organisation. So part of the division that I was in, I was the only female, and I had no idea what the other women did. So in the organisation, so that from the networking perspective, it was great. But I think what they were really trying to do is have more women in the leadership positions. But I'm not sure that it was the right sort of, it's the first time that they'd run it, so for me, it wasn't the right sort of program, and for their target audience of the company, I don't think it was as well. So very, again, software engineering, defensy, analytical, quite logical, and the program was a lot about, I don't know, a lot more like touchy-feely kind of things that I knew that people weren't comfortable with, and you could tell that a lot of people weren't necessarily engaging. So that's probably not the way to make lasting change within that particular organisation, but I did appreciate that they tried, and it was great to meet other women.
So thank you. Might change tack a little bit here. So have you ever felt self-conscious about dressing fun for work or wearing makeup?
Absolutely. Like I'm a little bigger here. Oh, sorry. I tried very hard to never ever wear anything which would show anything here. I'm very conscious about that.
I'm the same. I like to dress a little bit. Well, I kind of like to dress a little bit different, just to kind of be like, well, so what? What does it matter what I'm wearing, as long as you're listening to what I'm saying and how I'm behaving, and the values that I'm reflecting. And so hopefully that's also reflected in the way that I dress. So I have had the comment though, from a manager that I would look more professional if I tied my hair up more often, but I did say that I just like it down. So. Thank you.
That's a very odd comment to make. All right, so question for you both. Do you have female role models I can't speak today, apparently. Question for both. Do you have female role models you're inspired by in cybersecurity?
I find this a really difficult conversation, because in my time in cybersecurity, there's only really been one time where I've worked with another woman in cyber, and I didn't necessarily have a great relationship with them either, because I feel like neither of us had any experience in working with another woman in cyber. And so I joined organisations like ASA and AWSN looking for, mentors and people to look up to, whether or not they were male or female. And what I found was that I was a bit more of a role model and mentor, so that's what I've been trying to do instead, is to give back to others. And it took, joining an organisation to realise that. That's not to say I still have probably the same mentor I've had ever since I started in cyber. He started out as my manager, he became a mentor, and now we're also friends. So we board game every month as well, and I still bounce ideas off of him all of the time, and I totally respect his opinion. So. But yeah, I always find it very, very difficult to answer that. I would love to have, a female woman in cyber mentor.
And I'm really lucky. I've got a lot of mentors, and probably the key ones are male, and they are champions for female in the industry just as much as a female would be. They're mentoring me, they're supporting me to get in the industry. But there are also so many amazing females as well. So for example, Beck Chab, who runs this conference, who puts that on, she does so much more than just the AusCERT conference with AusCERT. She runs the whole business team there. Mandy Turner was our previous cybersecurity manager at UQ, and she was the one who got me into working with the Australian Information Security Association, which I've grown so much from. So have as many mentors as you can.
And just peers and friends and networks and support groups, right? They don't have to be formal mentors.
And I might use that as a opportunity to plug the Australian Women in Security Network mentoring program as well, which is currently open. What would you say are the challenges women in cyber face, and what can be done to encourage more women to enter and thrive in this field?
There's a lot of questions in that one.
I think the thing that I get asked most often about, how do I get into cyber essentially, is like, what pathways are there for me? And it's still early enough that there are no clear pathways. And so I really encourage people to choose your own adventure, right? Like that's, if that's what you like to do, then go ahead and grab it. You know, maybe you start out as an analyst and then you realise, you know, you like, maybe you'll give pen testing a go, you know, that's not really your thing. And then you can really choose your own adventure and follow your passion within cyber, and it's broad enough to do that.
And I think joining the community, like we are such a supportive bunch, and I know a lot of us probably have had quite negative experiences with some people, but that's not reflective of the vast majority of the community. So I notice anyone who wants to get into cyber, who comes to an ASER event or comes to a conference, they'll meet so many people and we'll have their back to try and get them into the industry.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we've got a couple of questions. Oh, we'll have a lot of questions here, so I don't think we'll have time to get through them all. So I'm just going from the oldest to the newest, or if any have been upvoted, so you can actually upvote in the app as well. What's been the one highlight of your career?
Actually, I recently hired someone 3 weeks ago that has been my absolute highlight. Doubled the team, which has never happened at my organisation previously. They either had 0 or 1 people. It was also what keeps me up at night as well, in that I want to keep her. So managing people keeps me up at night, in that if they're really awesome, I don't want to lose them. And what if they don't like me? What if they leave me because they don't like me? So, but that's been my greatest achievement.
And experiences like this, like I absolutely love seeing the community at conferences. I got to see 2 of my mentors here last night, and they both told me how proud they were of me, and how much I've accomplished and how amazing I am, and that's just so meaningful. I can't pick one. Actually,
that's true as well. Like, my mum finally realises what I do. So with kind of like with Reefs and Breaches, I was like, yeah, Mum, that's what I do. I advise, like, I tell people how to be more secure. But it actually took one of my cousins noticing that I'd been speaking at events about how to get more women in cyber, and then telling her about it, that she was like, oh wow, you're really good at this. I was like, thanks, Mum.
Maybe you can chat to my mum as well. How did you find working in a male-dominated career early on? And did you feel intimidated, and do you still feel intimidated by males in the workforce?
I have some trauma, yeah. My first job in cybersecurity was my dream job, and the key person I was working with did not like me because I was female. He used to complain to the cybersecurity manager that I was young and female and overly emotional and professionally inexperienced. And I quit that job, my dream job. So I really, really struggled, and I think we're being vulnerable here. I have seen a psychologist about it, because as I mentioned, I love this community. And then I was at AusCERT one year, and he was here. I was like, no, you can't be here, no. And I went and I cried outside. So I still struggle, but I'm really lucky that you surround yourself with the good people who build you up.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned earlier, there have been rare moments when I've looked back and gone, actually, that kind of wasn't right. But at the same time, I don't think I've ever been in a situation that wasn't then rectified by someone else because I told someone I trusted. Right? And so I think that's the key thing that I try and remind myself, and to remind others as well who might be feeling in similar situations. So kind of like, speak to someone that you trust and kind of go, does that seem right? Or is that okay? Should that be happening? And just check in, and because there are a lot more advocates and supporters out there than there are, people who are displaying those bad behaviours. So definitely do that, you're not alone.
Yeah, and I'm really big here on forging positive change. Like, those people are outliers, and I want to keep them outliers and make them even more outliers. Like, if someone's like that, no, put them in the bin. Yep. If a company is like that, don't work there, leave the company.
And sometimes they don't even realise that they're doing it, I think. So, and that's always good to call out, particularly for someone you trust who might know them as well, to kind of change those behaviours in a way that kind of says, hey, this is how you're being perceived. Is that how you intend it? And maybe not. Maybe it's not always malicious.
Cool. And I've got another question here. Have you had to work more or less hard to prove your skills as you've progressed through your career?
I don't know if I can, well, I've got no one to compare against, right, except myself. And I always like to work hard. So I've left organisations where, if you did really well, you got absolutely smashed. And so you started feeling like you just wanted to be kind of mediocre so that you could also have a life. And I was like, I don't want to be mediocre. So I want to do, I want to do good work and I want to be recognised for it. So it's really hard because I'm not really comparing myself with anyone else. I'm just doing the best that I can.
I'm the same. I think I just put these unrealistic high expectations on myself. So what I have started doing is actually writing goals, 12-month goals, but breaking it up in different areas of my life, and career is just one. And then I can look back and be like, wait, no, I did achieve that. It's okay. Like, you're not a failure, Shelly.
This is like adding things to your to-do list and then crossing it off, so you're like, achievement.
Yeah.
Get those endorphins running, right? Right, might have time for one more, and we'll go for, what do you find the most attractive thing about cybersecurity as a job or career?
Ooh. I'm just an absolute geek about it. An absolute geek. Like, for my 30th birthday party, I forced my family to come to my place and have a password party where I presented a PowerPoint presentation and made them download password managers. Like, I'm just a geek. So I love it, I fit in. This is my spot.
I'm a bit more like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I've always loved the fact that I could try different things. And now I can do that within cyber, which is an industry that I know really well, and that it's finally cool as well.
Yeah, finally cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have a business plan in place for Shelly's passwordparties.com?
I have had so many unsolicited PowerPoint presentations.
Can you give that to my mum and dad as well?
I could, yeah. My mum was really sweet though. She was there with a notepad taking notes and putting up her hand, and then other people were like, whoa, it's her 30th, I have to be here.
Excellent. Thank you both. Can we have a very warm round of applause for Vanessa and Shelly?
Thank you.